Welcome back, artists. In this video, I'm going to do something that I suggest every artist do periodically. And by that I mean go back to an old painting that you made and repaint it. You'll be surprised at how much you've learned and have grown since you painted the piece originally. Here's a painting that I made back on February 16, 2003. When I remember doing this, I was proud of myself for doing the tree. I liked the fact that I had an angle to it. And I had the leaves that were coming off the tree along the ground, some of the leaves up above the arching branches, and then my attempts at trying to show distance. This is actually meant to be a horizon line on a mountain ridge in the distance, but I struggled with it at the time. So to come back and do what I did before, I'm going to repaint this. So without further ado, let me start with my basic sketch. And I'm using just a number 2 lead pencil, automatic pencil, nothing fancy about it. It's just like the ones you use in school. And I'll just quickly sketch out the basic shape of the tree stump here. Quite a bit of taper to it. I put an old tree branch in there. My immediate foreground about like that, and then more distant hillside off like that. All right, there's my basic pencil sketch. Now I'm going to go over this in my zebra blue ink fountain pen. I'm just on a whim. I just decided I would make this a line and wash piece. I really like line and wash art. It's an old illustrator's technique that's been used for well over 100 years. The main critical thing is, though, that you've got to know the characteristics of your ink. And by that I mean specifically, is the ink waterproof or is it water soluble? This particular ink is water soluble, and that's perfectly fine. Either one of those is perfectly fine. The main thing is that you, the artist, knows what the attributes of that ink is. So since I know it's water soluble, I know it will dissolve when I put the watercolor paints on it. I just simply have to build that into my design. So I'll capture my basic branches coming off here. These lower ones will be bigger than this one. Okay, I'll place this one a little closer towards the foreground on the trunk. Come down here like the tip of the branch out. A little bit of cross-hatching to help make it more three-dimensional looking. Now, as you can see, I'm left-handed, and the common practice is that unless you are putting the source of the light right in the painting itself, by default you would put it off the painting. In the case of a left-hander like me, it would be off the painting at 10 o'clock. If I were a right-hander, it would be off the painting at 2 o'clock. But being a left-hander, I'm going to put it off the painting at 10 o'clock. And with that in mind, the cross-hatching that I'm doing just helps me remember where my shadows are. So if my light is coming down from the upper left, then the shadows are correspondingly on the lower right of all my objects. And I'll just roughly sketch in my horizon lines here, my various layers. There's supposed to be my distant trees. There's the distant hillside. And then I've got various branches coming down here from up above the tree. Now, I will go over these lines with my paints, so I just want to capture and just position them in my piece. So there's secondary branches coming off my main tree limb, and then that's in the distance here. All right. Now there's two schools of thought about whether you erase your pencil lines when you're doing a line and wash piece or not. I do it either way, but a lot of times I will erase it just because it makes my painting a little bit brighter when I remove the pencil lines. In some respects, since I very often pencil lines, I come back over with my paintbrush and put more graphite back on it. But I do that because when I'm putting on the watercolor graphite with my brush, I'm concentrating much more precisely on my source of light. And I'll do that here. Here's my watercolor graphite. This is literally just the same material, the graphite, like I had in number 2 lead pencil, but chemically treated so that it dissolves in water. And again, my source of light is from the upper left, so my shadows are all down here in the lower right. And in this case, my tree trunk. I'm using rough watercolor paper to help give me a more textured look, which I really like. And many watercolorists that do landscape painting like the rough watercolor paper, and I'm one of those. I really like the rough watercolor paper surface to work on. And then a little bit in here, bottom side of this branch, coming down here a little bit. Once you get used to sort of painting and drawing with your watercolor graphite with a brush like this, it's actually fun. You have a lot of control that when you first start, you think it would be really clumsy, but it's really not. You can do a surprising amount with it. Now, all I'm doing is catching my dark areas with this watercolor graphite. I have a little bit of dark shadow coming down here. Now, one of the things I didn't understand when I did this painting back in 2003 was this old landscaper's principle of lighten towards the horizon. And you do that to help show distance. I'm going to try to implement that a little bit better. And like I mentioned, come back and do and repaint an older piece that you did earlier for your own self-evaluation. It gives you a chance to see how you've grown as an artist and how you would treat the same subject differently as you have more experience. All right, so in furtherance of this, I want to show you how I've already changed things from what I had before. Originally, I didn't understand this concept of lightening towards the horizon. I made these values all the same value, all relatively the same color, dark. And let me explain too, this I printed off in a black and white printer. I really like doing that because it shows the difference in value. You can use whatever color you like, but the most important thing in doing any painting is getting your values correct. You can push color and have fun with color, and that makes it exciting. I like doing that myself. But to get the piece to read properly, to read like a painting and capture three-dimensional aspects of your art, you have to get your values correct. And I was struggling with this back in 2003 when I made this originally. I didn't really understand how important that was. So I made a few mistakes. For instance, my values on my distant trees here in the background are all the same, and they shouldn't be like that. They should be more like this, where they maybe start darker, and then using the old landscape principle, I've lightened them towards the horizon a little bit. I've also added some greater change in the values in the tree trunk itself that I didn't really have that well done in my original painting. And since I'm going to put more of the fallen maple leaves on the ground, I'm going to leave more of the white area around here. I also didn't capture the cast shadow of the trunk onto the ground below the trunk. And I like that I've done that better here. And right away you know that when you see this cast shadow down towards the lower right of the piece, you know that my source of light is off the page at the upper left of my piece. So already I'm liking the way this is turning out better. All right, so there, I'm going to consider that done in terms of my watercolor graphite. Now I'm going to have fun with color. I'm going to just go paint right over the top of my tree trunk and the watercolor graphite that I put on earlier. This is raw sienna that I'm using. Put it out here in a few of the big main branches. A few of these smaller ones too, they're sticking in. I very often like to couple the raw sienna with quinacridone burnt orange. I think they give a nice dramatic effect. The two colors complement one another very well. And I am painting now, moving relatively quickly, intentionally, because the paper is wet. The paint will go wherever the water goes. So if the paper is wet, the paints will run together. I'm trying to take advantage of that. So I'm moving with, drop in a little bit more color here. And there we go. Just a bunch of branches up here at the top of the tree. Right, I like that. Okay, so now my distant trees, although this is a maple tree in the foreground, I had envisioned these being evergreens in the background. So to stick with the way I had them originally, I will do that the same in this piece. In watercolors, you paint from light to dark. In this case, I am using sap green, which is my lighter green. I'll drop in some viridian, add some cobalt too here a little bit down here in the valley. Again, my source of light is from up here, upper left. There's a lot of blue and green. Green is made from blue, so to help darken it down here in the lower part of the piece where it's away from the sunlight, it would be darker here than up on top. So I've got a change in values from the top to the bottom. Darker at the bottom, lighter at the top. And I like the way that's looking. I think that looks just a little bit of added interest. Now I'm going to do something that may seem a little bit odd, and that is add red. The reason why is that red is a complement to green. Add a little red, make some purple. Now certain things happen when you use complementary colors. When you put them next to one another, they make each other stronger and more vibrant. When you mix them, they go towards a neutral color. And this I'm trying to play with letting them be next to green is a little more vibrant. And then I have a little bit of added blue here so they go to purple. And again, that's accentuating the fact that I want this to be dark down here in the lower valley area, then up on top of this ridge. And I think that's turning out nicely. I like that. Now another common thing that is done is to work, for many watercolors, to work from the background and come forward. I think I'll do that in my sky, and I want to stick with the winter theme, so I want this to be viewed as snow on the ground here. But to make my ground and sky look different, the paper is white, the snow is white. I need to change the color of the sky here, but I'll make it a nice bright winter day. Now I will intentionally leave some gaps here in my sky color because I want to come back with maple leaf colors. This is cerulean blue, sky blue. And again, I'm wetting the papers because the paint will go wherever the water goes. So, but just like with the trees, I want to have a change in value from top towards bottom. I always have loved the combination of cerulean blue with cobalt blue. I think they're just a natural sky color combination that just works so well together. So I'll use that here. Just like I did with the trees, I'm moving quickly while the paper is wet. And I have a value change from my top towards my horizon line. Darken this area a little bit up here. Okay, that's starting to take shape nicely. Now with the paper still wet and moist, I could drop in some, and I think that'll be fine. And part of why I say that is because I know the attributes of my paint. In this case, I'm using Hansa Yellow, which is a semi-opaque. Yellow very often is the weakest color, but you see in this case, because it's semi-opaque, it's strong enough to stand up against the blue in the background. So you can see the yellow. If this were some other type of yellow, it would fade away to nothing and you wouldn't notice it. Now when I put up above, and put on the ground here, because I have fallen leaves all around the tree, kind of just random like I did originally. And let's have fun with color. Let's have some red, a little bit of red. Kind of need the colors to sort of get blotchy and fade away. I might splatter this piece at the end of it to help add extra texture and blotchy looking leaves on the piece. That sounds like a good idea. I think I'll probably do that. A little bit up here too, and I think I'm going to make a few more little branches here. This is a sword dagger brush. It's wet now, but the bristles are cut at an angle like this. I really like it for making irregular lines, calligraphy like this, as opposed to a liner brush, which makes a more consistent line. I like a little bit of variation in it, so I'll show you here. Just calligraphy. These will be small branches coming down from the top of the tree. Quinacridone burnt orange again. Don't want to overdo it. There we go, a little bit like that. All right, so let's look at my reference painting again. First one that I did. Okay, I've got my branches here. I've got some of the leaves coming down. They're looking okay. Like I said, I'll splatter these towards the end. Help me get a little bit more of the leaves up here, leaves down here. I might want to extend this foreground area where I'm trying to show kind of a little bit of grass here and there sticking up through the snow. The snow is not that deep, so we'll try something like that here. We'll try to add a little texture, a little more interest. Here's where working with that rough paper really comes in nice. You just touch the paper a little bit and you get these irregular lines. I really love that. Since we call it snow, we'll have a little. And very commonly what I put up above the sky up here and the leaf colors I will put down below towards the bottom of my painting. Okay. Now by omission I've left the snow colors, the white areas here. So I need to glaze lightly this bottom area. And the same thing down here. Very wet wall so that the blue, my blue glaze runs and looks like even lighting. Vision is sort of a little valley area in here. Touch that a little bit with a little bit more blue. Add a little bit of cobalt here too, like I did in the sky. I kind of shadow. I'm going to, now it probably looks like I'm getting heavy-handed, and to a certain extent I am, but when you're painting, it's more important to put the paint on, and then if you've got a little bit too much, it's easier to take it off. You want to avoid overworking your piece, what some people call licking the paper, which is where you go glaze after glaze after glaze, because all you do is you lift off what you put down before. So you want to try to minimize that. So I'm going to touch these darkened areas here. Because when I put the paint on, I lifted off a little bit of my watercolor graphite that was underneath. And it just come down here like that. Put some lines in my ground. Touch it just a little bit more. On the original, when I ran this big limb off the edge of the page, do that touch. Okay, that's looking pretty well there, but I'm going to splatter some of my leaf colors up to try the yellow and the red. Just literally load up your brush, get it really runny, and I'll splatter this to help make my leaves look a little more realistic. Kind of just shield the rest of my house around here from getting totally splattered. Let's see if that's working. Try to get it wet, load up the brush, get it really wet and runny. All right, same thing down here. The leaves would fall on the ground. Okay. Splattering is fun to do. All right, let's try with the red now. It's got some yellow. The red over here. Again, get it real runny. Load up the brush. Try a little bit more. The red is easier to see. Okay. I like that. Let's compare that against what I did originally. Okay, here I had in terms of the background trees, I had them too uniform in terms of their value. They're the same from the low areas to the high areas. My trunk was a little too uniform in value. I like the dark ground on that. I like the fact that you can see the shift in the planes from the curvature of the hillside to where the tree trunk starts and grows out of it. I think that was successful. I don't have a change in value in my sky. I don't have a change in value in my snow. But here I think I have successfully corrected that. I now have change in value in my sky, change in value in my snow. I have lightened towards the horizon. You can see that in the snow and the sky, as well as these distant trees in the background. Where the light would be away from the source of light, down in the valley here, it is darker and lightens towards the horizon. My source of light is off the page at 10 o'clock. My cast shadows then correspondingly down the page towards the lower right. I've got a change in value on my tree, the trunks and branches. I've varied my colors in my leaves, the yellow and the red, and to help add a little bit of added texture, I did some splattering at the very end, and I like that. All right, I think that's fantastic. So once again, I highly recommend coming back and visiting, redoing a painting that you did many years ago, or something that you did even just 6 months ago. You will grow and develop as an artist, and you won't recognize it in the day-to-day little activities that you do. But when you let time pass and you come back to it, you'll be surprised at how much you've learned and how much you've grown as an artist. This is a good exercise to help confirm that you're really developing as an artist. So I highly recommend going back and repainting a piece that you did before. And this one I did over 20 years ago, and I like the way that it looks now. I'm happy with this new piece. I'm still happy with the old one, because I can remember how I struggled with it, and it was a part of the learning process. So with that said, thank you very much, everyone. Please give me a thumbs up, please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.